My name is Sandra Lehman, and I was 35 years old when a single text message quietly ended my marriage, long before either of us said the word divorce out loud. It came in while I was sitting in a conference room at work, pretending to listen to a quarterly projection I'd already memorized. My phone vibrated once against the table. Just once. I glanced down without thinking, expecting something mundane. A grocery reminder, a love you, anything normal. Instead, the screen read, "Hey babe, I took $20,000 from our joint account for my business with Lauren. This is going to be huge. Don't be selfish about it. It benefits both of us. Love you." I stared at the number first. $20,000. Not $200. Not $2,000. $20,000 lifted from the account my husband and I had spent 5 years building brick by brick. That account wasn't casual money. It was our house fund. The down payment we'd scraped together by skipping vacations, driving old cars, and saying, maybe next year more times than I could count. It was supposed to be the beginning of stability, a place that would finally belong to us. And now with one text message, he had decided it belonged to him. What hurt wasn't just the money, it was the wording. Don't be selfish. The preemptive accusation. The assumption that I would object, and that if I did, I'd be the villain. I typed back one word. Okay. I didn't argue. I didn't call. I didn't ask questions. Instead, I excused myself from the meeting, walked out to my car, and drove straight to the bank. The teller recognized me. She smiled, asked how my day was going. I smiled back and asked for a cashier's check for the remaining balance, $85,000. I closed the joint account, opened a new one in my name only, deposited the check. 45 minutes. That's all it took. That night, my husband came home glowing, talking fast, laughing, already living in the future he'd spent our money on. He hugged me and said he knew I'd understand. I looked at him and realized something chillingly clear. He had no idea what was coming. The silence lasted 3 days. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that hums beneath the skin tight and electric, like the air before a storm. My husband went about his routine as if nothing had shifted. He left early, came home late, made phone calls in the other room, whispered excitedly about next steps and big momentum. Always careful to keep his voice just low enough that I wouldn't hear details he hadn't bothered to clear with me anyway. I watched him the way you watch someone you suddenly don't recognize. On Friday afternoon, my phone rang. His name flashed across the screen. I answered without greeting him. "What did you do?" he shouted, skipping straight past hello. "I moved the money," I said calmly, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "You what?" I closed the joint account. A pause. Then disbelief turned to fury. "Where is it?" "In my account." Silence again, but this time stunned. "That was our money," he snapped. "You don't just get to take it." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. Funny. That's exactly how I felt when you took $20,000 without asking. "This is different," he said immediately. "That was for the business." "The business you didn't discuss with me," I replied. "The business you decided on without my input. The business you funded with our house fund." "I needed to pay Lauren," he said, voice rising. "The office lease is due Monday. We have contracts to sign." "You should have thought about that before you decided I didn't deserve a conversation." "Put it back," he demanded. "No." He hung up on me. 20 minutes later, the front door slammed open so hard the walls rattled. He stormed into the living room, and he wasn't alone. Lauren followed him in heels, clicking sharply against the floor like punctuation marks. She looked exactly the same as she always had. Confident smile, practiced outrage eyes, already calculating the angle of attack. "Sandra," she said, folding her arms. "This is ridiculous." "I didn't invite her to sit. I didn't even stand up." "You're sabotaging your husband's future," she continued. "Our business is legitimate." I tilted my head. "Did he tell you he took the money without asking me?" She waved it off. "It's marital money. He doesn't need permission." I met her gaze unblinking. "And I don't need permission to protect what's left from another one of your failed ventures." My husband spun toward me. "How dare you?" "How dare you?" I shot back. "Show me the business plan." They both froze. "Show me the market research," I continued. "The financial projections. The sign-in client contracts. Anything that proves this isn't just another idea you got excited about over drinks." Silence. Lauren's jaw tightened. "We don't need to justify ourselves to you." "No," I said evenly. "But you needed my money." My husband's voice cracked. "You're destroying my future." "Our future?" I asked quietly. "You destroyed it the moment you treated our savings like your personal checking account." He grabbed his keys, anger spilling over into desperation. "I'm staying with my sister." "Good," I said. "You should." They left in a storm of accusations and slammed doors, but as the house fell quiet again, something inside me finally settled. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't excitement gone too far. It was entitlement. And that realization hurt far more than the money ever could. Monday morning came with the kind of calm that feels fake in hindsight, like the universe taking a breath before delivering a punch. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone rang from an unknown number. Ms. Lehman, a man said crisply, all rehearsed professionalism. This is Gregory Matthews. I represent Lauren's consulting firm. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding promised investment funds. I almost laughed. Almost. There's no misunderstanding, I said. My husband took money from our joint account without my knowledge. I secured what was left. She had authorization to access those funds, he countered smoothly. And your actions have placed my client in a precarious legal position. She stole $20,000, I replied. I prevented her from stealing more. A pause, then a subtle shift in tone. If the promised capital isn't delivered, my client will pursue legal action against your husband for breach of agreement. Good luck, I said lightly. He has about $2,000 to his name. We may pursue marital assets. Please do, I said. I'd love to explain to a judge how this agreement was funded by theft. He hung up. By that afternoon, the messages started. First from my sister-in-law, you're being petty. Then from my mother-in-law, marriage is about compromise. Then from his father, you're humiliating him. Compromise apparently now meant absorbing betrayal quietly. The real damage, though, didn't come from the family. It came from Lauren. On Wednesday morning, she posted on LinkedIn a long, polished paragraph about resilience and betrayal, about partners who fail to honor commitments, about having the courage to pivot when others let you down. She tagged my husband. She named the business. She implied fraud without saying the word. By lunchtime, the comments were brutal. Sounds like you signed contracts without funding. This is why you don't mix friendship and business. So you took money from your spouse without consent. By evening, my husband called me, his voice frantic. She's destroying me, he said. Everyone's seeing this. Clients, co-workers. You destroyed yourself, I replied. She's just narrating it badly. She's saying I promised her the money. You did. She's calling me unreliable. You were. Silence. Then quietly, I need you to help me. I closed my eyes. Not because I was tempted, but because part of me mourned the fact that he still didn't understand. No, I said. I won't save you from consequences you chose. That night, Lauren doubled down. Screenshots. Messages, partial conversations stripped of context, enough to inflame strangers who didn't care about truth, only drama. By Friday, my husband deactivated his accounts. By Monday, his job noticed. The betrayal that started with a private text had gone public, and once it did, there was no pulling it back. I slept better than I expected, because somewhere between the threats and the humiliation, I realized something freeing. I wasn't watching him fall. I was watching him finally stand on the truth he'd been avoiding. And it couldn't hold his weight. The lawsuit arrived on Monday. Not a warning, not a threat. A process server showed up at my husband's office just after lunch, handed him an envelope in front of 2 coworkers, and asked him to confirm his name. By the time he called me, his voice was shaking so badly I barely recognized it. She's suing me, he said. Not just for the $20,000, $45,000. Damages. Lost opportunities. I closed my laptop slowly. Then she's finally being honest about what she wanted. This is your fault, he snapped, panic turning sharp. You could have stopped this. I didn't take the money, I said. I didn't promise it. And I didn't sign contracts based on imaginary capital. You're my wife, he said. Desperation bleeding through the anger. You're supposed to protect me. I replied quietly, until you decided I didn't deserve protection in return. The fallout was immediate. HR called him in the next morning not to fire him, but to document. Being sued for fraud, even in a civil case, was not a good look for someone in his role. They placed him on temporary leave, pending review. When he came home that night, he looked smaller somehow, deflated. The confidence that used to fill rooms with him was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood that charm doesn't cancel consequences. I might lose my job, he said, sinking onto the couch. That's unfortunate, I replied. He stared at me, eyes red. You don't mean that. No, I admitted. I don't. He tried everything after that. Apologies, excuses, nostalgia. He reminded me of our first apartment, our early years, the nights we stayed up talking about the future. He lowered his voice, touched my arm, told me he was scared. I made a mistake, he said, but you're letting it destroy my life. You're confusing cause and effect, I answered. I didn't make you take the money. I didn't make you promise it to Lauren. and I didn't make you double down instead of owning it. Midweek, his parents showed up at my office. Security called me down. His father stood there stiffly, jaw clenched, like this was a business negotiation instead of a family implosion. "She's my daughter," he said. "I swore I'd protect her." "She swore to honor me," I replied. "How honored do you think I felt reading that text?" "She's facing the consequences," he insisted. "This could ruin her career." "She chose actions that could ruin her career," I said. "That part isn't on me." By Thursday, Lauren exploded again, this time everywhere. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Full victim narrative. Screenshots, names, accusations. She painted herself as betrayed, ethical, wronged. She tagged my husband directly and labeled him unreliable, dishonest, unethical. The internet did what it always does. They dug, they questioned, they tore it apart. By that night, my husband shut down every account he had. By Friday morning, his company placed him on administrative leave. He sat on the couch when I got home, laptop open, unread emails, piling up hands, covering his face. "I'm probably fired," he said. I nodded. "That tracks." He looked up at me, then really looked like he was seeing me for the first time in months. "How did we get here?" he asked. "We were happy." "We were," I said softly, "until you decided entitlement was the same thing as trust." That was the moment I knew the marriage was over. Not because of the lawsuit, not because of the job, but because even now, buried under consequences, he still framed this as something that happened to him, not something he chose. By the time the dust settled, the house felt emptier than it ever had, even before he stopped sleeping there. The lawsuit dragged on for 3 weeks. Lauren came in loud and confident, demanding everything she thought she was owed. Then reality caught up. No contracts with teeth, no proof of funds, no viable business. When her attorney explained what discovery would look like and how her own messages would be examined, her certainty evaporated. She settled for $5,000 just to make it go away. My husband didn't have $5,000, so he sold his car, the one he'd loved more than anything else. A luxury he could no longer afford, gone in a rushed, humiliating transaction that barely covered the settlement. He came home afterward and told me like it was a confession. "I had no choice," he said. "You had choices," I replied. "You just didn't like the consequences attached to them." The business Lauren swore would rise never materialized. The office lease she signed without funding collapsed, and the landlord sued her for breaking it. Her investment turned out to be mostly debt and bravado. Within weeks, she was facing eviction and quietly deleting posts she'd once shared proudly. My husband's parents stepped in not to save his dream, but to keep him afloat. He moved back into their house, unemployed, bitter, still convinced he was the victim. The divorce paperwork arrived shortly after. He tried to claim half of the remaining money, claimed I was financially abusive for cutting him off, claimed marriage meant shared risk. My lawyer calmly presented the text messages, the admission, the timing, the unilateral withdrawal. The judge didn't need long. Final settlement, he kept his personal belongings, his debt, and $10,000 from the house fund. I kept the rest. $75,000 and my sanity. The night the divorce terms were finalized, he texted me. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed my life over money," I replied once. "You destroyed your life over money. I just refused to pay for the demolition." He wrote back that he loved me, that I loved his bank account, that it wasn't fair. Neither was stealing $20,000 without asking. I haven't heard from him since. I kept the apartment. I started looking at houses, smaller than what we planned, but mine. Funny how far $75,000 goes when you're not carrying someone else's entitlement with it. Some people say I went too far, that I should have worked it out, that marriage means forgiveness. But here's the truth. The marriage ended the moment he sent that text. Not because of the money, but because of the assumption behind it. The belief that he could take what he wanted, shame me preemptively, and expect support afterward. When someone shows you how they view your boundaries, believe them. The house fund is growing again. My job is stable. My peace is returning. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's simple. Don't steal from people, especially the ones who trusted you the most. A month after the divorce papers were signed, the quiet finally felt real. Not the hollow kind that echoes when something is missing, but the steady, grounded silence of a life no longer waiting for the next impact. I noticed it one morning while making coffee, standing barefoot in the kitchen, as sunlight spilled across the counter. There was no knot in my chest, no instinct to check my phone, no low-grade anxiety humming in the background. For the first time in years, nothing was about to go wrong. I started telling the story differently in my own head. Not as the marriage that failed, but as the boundary that finally held. That shift mattered more than I expected. It stopped me from romanticizing what I'd lost and forced me to see what I'd escaped. A mutual friend tried to update me about him one afternoon, hesitating like she was stepping onto thin ice. I stopped her gently. "I'm not curious," I said, and I meant it. That surprised both of us. Because curiosity is often just grief in disguise, a way of reopening wounds to see if they still hurt. Mine didn't, not the way they used to. The sharp pain had faded, replaced by something quieter and sturdier clarity. I toured houses on weekends, small ones, modest ones, places that didn't echo with other people's expectations. I imagined furniture that didn't have to be negotiated, colors that didn't require compromise, and futures that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. One afternoon, while signing paperwork for a pre-approval, the banker smiled and said, "It's impressive you did this on your own." I corrected her without thinking. "Not on my own," I said, "just without interference." That felt important. Sometimes late at night, fragments of the past still surfaced. The early years, the laughter, the version of him I thought I married. But nostalgia no longer fooled me. I could miss what was good without pretending it was enough. Because love without respect is just obligation wearing a softer face. I didn't come out of this story richer than I went in, at least not financially, but I came out intact, untangled, awake. I learned that boundaries don't ruin relationships. They reveal which ones were never built to survive honesty in the first place. And if there's an ending to all of this, if there's a lesson worth carrying forward, it's this. Peace doesn't arrive dramatically. It slips in quietly once you stop paying for other people's choices. I close the door at night now,